Hi, I'm speaking today with Susan Ives. She's come to us here from Berkeley, California to visit our town of Greenbelt, Maryland. We're the New Deal town, built in 1937. Susan's part of the Living New Deal organization. They've been cataloging and investigating over 17,500 New Deal sites around the country. And Susan, tell us a little bit about the Living New Deal organization.
Well, let me just say, for starters, I'm thrilled to be in Greenbelt. I've been reading and writing about your town for so long, and I've never been here before. You've been so welcoming, and I just so appreciate everything that you've taught me today about this beautiful place. The Living New Deal is in Berkeley, California. It began at the University of California as a geography department project where students were looking into what the New Deal had built in California. And within that project, they mapped about 1,000 New Deal projects just in the state. So some years later, beginning around 2012, which is when I think I stepped into the organization, they decided to go national and to use crowdsourcing as a way to get people to send information about New Deal sites in their community. So all over the country, people were sending in information about their schools or their post offices or their town halls or artworks or murals. And they'd send information about who built the site or who painted the mural, when it was done, under what agency, and the GPS coordinates. So that led to an online database that people can search by city, by town, by agency, by state, which will tell them what the New Deal created, where they're looking. And then subsequently, and most recently, there's now a phone app for an Apple phone where you can install the app and then you can send in the coordinates, the GPS coordinates and the description of the site from your phone to our offices in California. We'll check out the site, make sure that they're legit, and then those sites get added to the website, which, as you say, now has over 17,000 sites. We think that the Living New Deal has just scratched the surface. We think there's probably hundreds of New Deal sites out there that have yet to be discovered. So when people inquire about it, we always encourage them to let us know if there's a New Deal site that they don't find on our website, to send us that information so that we can add it.
That's very interesting. So the government records, you would think the archives would have this, but it's never been cataloged or organized as far as you know?
As far as I know, this is the first national database of what the New Deal constructed. And it's a physical legacy that we're trying to document. My understanding is that after the New Deal ended, which was the beginning of World War II, things kind of got disassembled really quickly. And a lot of records were just not lost or never really kept track of. And there's never been like a central repository for this information. A lot of the agencies kept their own records. So this is a way of trying to galvanize what is available, but also to discover perhaps what was never documented in the first place.
Very interesting. We sort of take it for granted living here in Greenbelt because we're surrounded by all this New Deal art and all this New Deal community with them. And for a long time I thought there were only 3 New Deal towns built. Actually there were 98 of them, but they were progressively more evolved. They started with Arthurdale, West Virginia, which is a very interesting town that Eleanor Roosevelt had total hands-on experience with, to the point of picking refrigerators and so forth. And we were sort of the most evolved here in Greenbelt. And had World War II not come along, there would have been a lot more. But this is the community and the housing aspect is just one part of the New Deal. You're dealing with many other facets like art and writers and so forth. What do you personally find the most fascinating?
I'm really interested personally in photography and the ways in which life in the 1930s was documented by some of the FSA photographers. Some of those iconic images that today are just viewed with such respect for how they really captured the mood of the nation and the struggles that people were experiencing during that time. So that's an interest that I have. But you're right, there's so much out there that I've been learning about, the artwork in particular. One thing about the record keeping that I recently learned is that the Living New Deal recently did a tour of an art exhibit at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art that was of WPA artists of a whole spectrum of media. There was weavings and photographs and paintings, etc. And it turned out that these artworks had been allocated to museums all over the country. And again, it was a way of the government distributing this trove of WPA and a federal art project materials without keeping track of them. And I was working with a young curator at the museum who was assigned to go through an inventory, something like 876 individual art pieces, because the museum itself didn't really know what it had. And she and her fellow curators identified all those art pieces, who did them, when they were done, and then picked out 50 that they liked the best for this little exhibit that they did. But our sense is that there's materials like that all over the country that people don't even know what's out there, including the museums and universities and public institutions that receive these so-called allocations, but haven't had eyes on them for maybe 80 or 90 years.
You mentioned the photography. The New Deal, Living New Deal organization puts out webinars, and we're running them on our Gate channel. And the most recent one that you did back in May was on Arthur Rothstein, the photographs. I think it was called Through the Lens of
Arthur Rothstein.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Art and Intersections, New Deal photography through the lens of Arthur Rothstein. It was presented by his PhD daughter, who had some really very interesting insights that only a family member would know, and a great collection and wonderful photos. That was one of that I found also the most interesting.
Yeah.
And here we are sitting behind a Lenore Thomas statue. Now, she did this a little bit later than the earlier bas-reliefs that you've looked at, and this mother and child statue that we have. But one of the things we don't have here in Greenbelt is paintings. They gave us plenty of sculptures, but no paintings. So we did take a copy and made a poster of one that hangs in the Justice Department. It's Contemporary Man and Justice, and it's a picture of Greenbelt being built. Yeah, it's just hanging on the wall over at the Cedars of Lebanon Cafe restaurant. Anyway, 2 episodes of the Living New Deal that deal with very crucial issues of our day. One is called The New Deal and Far-Right Extremism, Saving the Republic. And the other one is entitled Biden's Climate Corps, and where he's replicating the Civilian Conservation Corps, who did so much good works around this country, everything from the Skyline Drive in Virginia to you name it. But those are 2 so very vital issues today, and yet he dealt with them in his day, or they did. So you want to talk about that a little bit, those kind of projects?
Yeah, I mean, that Build Back Better, BBB, Build Back Better plan or whatever that Biden had, would have reinstated a civilian conservation corps that he called the Climate Corps. But when that bill finally got through the Congress about a month ago, the Conservation Corps wasn't included, which is really a tragedy because they did so much amazing work, and they provided job and training to so many young men at the time, and presumably if it were to be reinstated, it would include, be much more diverse, and there would be women involved, and unfortunately that's still not going to happen, at least not as far as we know. Yeah. I can't really comment on the Kevin Baker webinar about extremism during the 1930s. It certainly seems like there's parallels to today. And so it was a very timely webinar. We have some interesting webinars coming up about endangered New Deal art. So we're going to be talking about that beginning in October. One of the one of the topics that's coming up will be really interesting to me because it's about the Federal Theater Project. And Susan Quinn, who did the biography of Hallie Flanagan, who was the head of the Federal Theater Project, Susan Quinn wrote the biography. It was called Furious Improvisation. And Susan's recently, with her partner, written a script about Hallie's life in the Federal Theater Project, and we're going to be presenting some of that in the webinar. So we'll do a reading from the script. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, and if you visit our town center, our theater, that marquee, there's no, it's not accidental that it's kind of the secular spire of the cathedral of the town square, you know, because that's what it was designed to look like.
Yeah.
One other question I had, the motto of the Living New Deal is still working for America. And can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. Well, many people don't know that we're surrounded by the legacy of the New Deal. You know, the infrastructure that we're still using, the schools, the post offices. I mean, in Washington, D.C., if you look on our newest New Deal map, which is of Washington, D.C., you see that the infrastructure included the first sewage system that the city installed. There's the zoos, there's all the murals and artworks in the federal buildings that we see. The National Mall was renovated and redone by New Deal workers. So the New Deal is all around us, but often it's unseen. So what we're trying to communicate is that we have this precious example. And we want for people to start thinking about, well, if we could do something this extensive and this useful and practical that has served us for so long, at a time that America was in a depression, why can't we do something like this now? So I guess our subtext is we need a New Deal.
Any other messages you'd like to tell us East Coasters about
I just want to thank
do?
you for the opportunity and for giving me such a warm welcome to your community. It's really been just a joyous day, and I hope that I can come by again.
Oh, well, I hope you do, and I hope you stay. And seeing you on the webinars and now getting to meet you in person has been truly a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you all for watching. Catch our webinars rebroadcasts from the Living New Deal, and you can go on their site, livingnewdeal.org. They have great maps. There's a map of Washington, D.C., a map of New York City New Deal sites. There's another one too, I think.
San Francisco.
San Francisco, that's right, San Francisco. There's 3 maps so far that they produce that are wonderful walking tour or maps of various sites.
The maps will be available at the Greenbelt Museum.
Yep.
And our new map, which we're still trying to raise money for, is of Los Angeles, which has a huge New Deal legacy.
I'm sure. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so
for
much,
watching.
Frank.
Thank you, Susan, and everybody. Have a good day.